You said that today's nuclear deterrence force is not your father's deterrence force. And you talked about this standard of perfection. Some say that it's that standard of perfection that led to cheating, for example. How do you respond to that? And is the switch to a pass-fail system a good move?
Well, those are two separate issues, so let me take on the perfection issue first. How you describe the highest conceivable standards is up to you. My description of that was perfection. That's not uncommon. You hear great athletes talk about striving for perfection. You hear about coaches striving for perfection. I used to sit in orchestras and musical groups where the conductor made it pretty clear that they were striving for perfection. So I think if that's the word you use to define the highest possible standards and the expectation, then fine, and I'm comfortable with that word. But it was misapplied. Mm-hmm. And how it was misapplied is perfection is a standard to be achieved, I believe, in operational activities. It isn't a standard to be achieved in training. There are times when you're supposed to make mistakes. We want you to make mistakes. But it's not when you're active in an operation in the field with live nuclear weapons. Those are the times when I believe perfection remains the standard. But I'm comfortable with saying it's the highest possible standard. I'm comfortable with using whatever word you're comfortable with, and I do understand how that word perfection got misapplied. By the way, perfection and my signature block are associated. You can find a lot of places where I said perfection is the standard here, and I believe it. But I do understand how it could be misapplied. That issue was a leadership issue. That was not an issue of saying that perfection was the standard. It was leaders who misapplied it or who allowed the application of it to drift away from where it's important.
But does the pass-fail make sense? Does it?
Pass-fail can make sense. It can make sense, sure. It's the objective behind taking tests is, and by the way, the tests that were taken, nuclear-related people take lots of tests, and they take lots of tests because we have an expectation that their knowledge level is very high. And it isn't always team knowledge level. Even though you work together as teams, the team is only as strong as the weakest link. And with nuclear weapons, you want that weak link to be pretty strong. You don't want that weak link to be really weak. So there's an issue of you elevate everyone to a certain level, and then some excelled above that as well. The problem was in telling sort of those who were excelling beyond that and those who weren't, is there a real difference between them? And using that as a metric to tell the difference between them, I think was misapplied. So pass-fail is fine with me. The objective is make sure they have the knowledge.
They know their business.
And they know their business, and they know what they're supposed to do and when, and make sure that it doesn't matter if you take them one at a time, because in every activity involving nuclear weapons, the key concept is two-person control. And what that means is that if you and I are working with a nuclear weapon, you better know as much about it as I do, because if I'm doing something wrong, you're supposed to be able to detect it and stop it. And so it's a certain level, there's a threshold floor here for everybody that's pretty high.